August 29th, Chief Perez announced he had been reinstated, explaining, quote, "I decided to have him back at work where he could be supervised." And off-duty offenses, Officer John Carano, who in March drove drunk down a one-way street, injuring civilians, to our knowledge, is still on the force. Officer Stephen Figueroa, charged 3 times with domestic violence in November 2017 and April 2018, to our knowledge, is still on the force. An off-duty unnamed officer driving recklessly and then holding a gun at an unarmed civilian's head with children present.
So those are some of the things that we have been tracking, that we find, or that leads us to the conclusion that our police department is in deep crisis, is in a deep cultural crisis, a deep crisis of leadership. And we have residents here who want to share their experiences with you firsthand. So whoever would like to step up to do that.
Hey,
Oh, I'm sorry.
if it's okay, I'll take notes, but I'm not taking down names of individuals who speak. I think it's important for you to know, okay? But I'm over 60, I ain't gonna remember if I don't write it down. So I do jot down some notes, but I am not taking down names, because that doesn't matter, okay? It's the story that counts, not the name of the person who's giving it. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
One thing that we did forget is I have, can you make the sound for me? Oh, yes.
Oh.
That sound. That's the please stop talking sound. I'll give you 3 minutes. I will give you 3 minutes. Is anybody uncomfortable? Come on, y'all lying. You're very uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Julian, Casey, and I, and a couple of other folks in Gen Now, did some research on the police department. We've been doing some police accountability and transparency work for a couple of years now, and this is, for me, the first time that I've seen anybody from the police department in a room, the things that we've done, with the exception of last meeting with Gen Now. So for me, this is a really contentious issue. It's really uncomfortable to be here. This isn't usually the way I personally go about things, so just recognizing that we're all coming in with different stuff. I want everybody to feel free to speak frankly, to speak honestly. This is a community space, and yeah, so I would encourage you to do that, and if you're uncomfortable, that's okay, I'm right there with you. Right, so just as a reminder, this is an opportunity for the community to air their concerns. Considering we have a consultant crafting a report, it's really important that our voices make it into that report too, because we want to be the ones who shape this city. And hopefully those concerns will be reflected. So if you hear the ding, that means you got like 30 seconds to wrap it up. Or there's something that was said that's out of line with our community agreements or what we're doing today. Does that make sense? Everybody good? Does anybody want to start? Hi.
So I think one thing I'd like to talk about is relationships between the police department and the community. Not too long ago, my road, I live on Huntington Turnpike, my road was blocked off. There were several cops blocking off the road. I had left my residence, which was, I guess, they had moved the blocking to now include my driveway. And so I'd forgotten something and I needed to go home and I wanted to get it. The police officer, I said, oh, I'm sorry, my driveway is right there, like it's an eye shot of where I am. And I said, I really need to get back, I forgot something. And the officer said, I don't care, you're not getting past here. And that comment was, I understand if I'm not allowed to go there because there may be somebody with a gun or something like that, but I didn't know what the situation was. He wasn't telling me what the situation was. But the fact that I responded with, I live right there, my driveway is right there. Can I just go to my driveway? Obviously, I couldn't walk, whatever, but I was in my car. And when he said, I don't care, that made me feel like, okay, I did something wrong. What am I doing wrong? I'm just trying to go home to grab something, but now you're making me feel like I'm part of the situation that's happening, and I have no involvement in it. So I think the way that cops react to citizens, and I think that is super important because now I have a little bit of a negative view on the police in this city because I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was trying to go home, and the officer spoke to me in a really rude manner. And I don't care what the situation is over there. You see that I'm clearly not part of it. Why would you treat me as if I'm part of the problem? And that's really all I have to say.
Anyone else want to come up? Yes.
Good afternoon. I just want to kind of break the ice. There's like a lot of tension around here. I just want you guys to know you can feel comfortable to talk to us. I'm a Bridgeport resident. I lived here my whole life. I grew up on State Street. I went to Curiel. I went to Elias Howe. I went to Fuller Havens. I went to Housatonic. I went to Sacred Heart, and I'm graduating 3 weeks from Coastal University with my master's. I'm part of your community. I play baseball in these parks. I go to your stores. I live right around the corner from some of you guys. So the same things you guys are seeing in your community, we are.
So, thank you. I just want to remind you that we are here to listen to them.
I just wanted to
You're
break the
here,
ice.
I get it, thank you. But this is a space for the community to let you know, for you to hear. You don't have to respond.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening, everyone. Shamir Holmes, Bridgeport resident, community organizer for the Bridgeport Education Association, and I am also associated with Her Time and Hang Time in Bridgeport. I am really here on behalf of the youth, the relationship that we have with the students. Because of my project with community schools, I deal a lot with high schoolers at the moment, and we're trying to implement a plan where the schools are a hub of information for resources, not just for students during the daytime, but for parents outside of regular business hours. So my concern is, what is the plan for how we react to when youth are involved and when police have to get involved with situations on campus and even outside of school? Our kids don't trust the police. They are afraid, and even though they act as if they're hard and, but that's just, I guess, a reaction to being afraid and knowing that at any time, something bad can happen. So I'm just really concerned with the relationships with the youth and the police and what we can do moving forward. I've seen a lot of youth, again, react crazily because they're like, well, if I'm gonna go out, like I'm doing this for a reason. So I'm really concerned for the kids, and not just high schoolers, but even as early as students in elementary school. The treatment of the youth as early as elementary, that's a problem for me because we're taking away from the fact that they are children still. So it's been a lot of instances where I've had youth in spaces where they're talking to me about, how they felt they were disrespected and, the tones that officers and influencers use with the youth. That's a concern. So again, the language that we use with our children here in the city, as well as some kind of strategic plan just to not be in their faces when something goes wrong, but to try to build this relationship with them where it's not always a negative interaction with police and youth. So that's really a concern of mine, and that's really why I'm here talking about it in this space, because it's something that needs to be worked on.
a Bridgeport resident, but I'm also a probation officer here in the city. I'm here as a parent because I have an 18-year-old autistic son. And I want to kind of piggyback on what she is saying. As law enforcement, I know my job, I know my place, but as a parent and a resident, I fear for my son because he has an invisible disability. And because of that, I'm concerned about the planning and the action and how officers are being trained to deal with those Black and brown children that have invisible disabilities. Because there's no indication that anything's going on, but they will become combative, non-compliant to a simple request as, what are you doing here? So my fear is how he and his peers will be dealt with in the community, as they're not really known if you're not in the schools, if you're not in the communities, because I don't keep him out in the community because it's not safe. Because someone may not understand that he's autistic when he's not compliant, when he's walking away, when you touch him and he responds because he doesn't want to be touched. Because they have a social disorder that does not allow them to communicate, does not allow them to be touched. And they can't read your social cues. They just know to focus, get to where they're going to, and that's it. So when they get on a one-track mind and the route, they're going to basically be non-compliant. So now I have to take the steps to prepare him, if he's not in my presence, on how to behave in the community. But how do I do that when it's just me? I'm one person, but these young adults, and she says as far as the youth are concerned, the numbers are growing. So, he was born in 2000. They're now becoming young adults. So now is the city prepared to deal with the high influx of autistic, schizophrenic youth and so forth that are here that don't present and cannot tell you what is going on with them, but yet become unresponsive and non-compliant, so to speak, in their actions. They can't control it, but it's evident. And they are part of this community, and most of the kids are not even educated here, because when they get to a certain age and they do become non-compliant, they're bussed out. So you're not going to know them in the community because they go to school in Milford or in Hamden, because the city can't even educate them here. So you're not going to know them because they're not your normal neighborhood kids.
I'll speak because I have to leave. My name is Anthony Marshall. I represent Street Safe Bridgeport. We're a non-law enforcement organization that helps the youth here in the city. We have I have a Quill here. We have Rob Pratt. We also have our director. I'm actually going to tell you something that happened personally with me and the Bridgeport police. And it really, 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 honestly, it killed the relationship that I would have had with the police. So I was pulled over one night, and it was two officers. One of the officers, I am surprised he's still on the force, but I was pulled over one night. And to make a long story short, got pulled over. The other officer came, which is Officer Boulay. He came to the scene. Not the one that pulled me over, but he was the one that insisted that my car would be searched. For what reason? I don't know. He insisted it, and he kept insisting that my car be searched. The other officer was saying, no, I know who this guy is. He helps the youth. He worked with Street Safe, so on and so forth. Boulay said, no, I want to search his car. He searched my car. I didn't have no problem. I said, you can search my car. He searched my car. When he searched my car, he seen that he didn't find anything. But then he went to the back of my trunk. Everyone knows that I sell oils, incense, soaps, so on and so forth. Officer Boulay decided to take a drug field test on my oils. It came back 1% something, and another officer, he called his lieutenant, another officer came, and they said, you know what? Boulay said, no, it's I don't know the language of the officers, but said, no, it's 1% something, 1% something. And the other officer is telling him, I don't want to do this to this man. He is helping the community. He is trying to stop the kids from killing each other. He said, I don't want to do this to this man. And he said, I know this man sells oils. Boulay still went with it. Boulay charged me with possession with intent to sell for smell good oils. That happened in September. I contacted the chief. I left a message. No one got back. told him what happened. I contacted Porter. He contacted me back and said he'll see what he can do. No one ever contacted me back. I contacted Officer Armada. Nobody never contacted me back. I had to pay $1,800 to get out of prison. Me, the one that's out in the community, that the police expect to build a community and police relationship. I had to bond out $1,800. And the people, and honestly, I was worried about what the kids would think about me. Not what the people would think, but the kids. But the kids trusted me and knew that I didn't do whatever it is that they feel, that they claim that I did. So to make a long story short, just 2 months ago, all I got was an apology from a judge saying, honestly, I looked at your past and believed what the officer said in his report. But I apologize to you. And that's my problem right now. That's my situation. And I feel I should not have ever went through that.
Anybody else would like to speak next?
I'm Pastor Doran Wright of Neighborhood Church, and I'm also a juvenile youth work analyst. I also work with a lot of youth who are either pre-adjudicated or post-adjudicated, and appear to work in juvenile detention as well. So, and I have a particular neighborhood that's PT Barn. So I have a lot of families that I minister to in the PT Barn community, and I live actually in the neighborhood. A few weeks ago, on graduation night at Clear Magnet Academy, which is a neighborhood school, and I volunteer about 3 hours a day in the school, facilitating restorative practices. So I'm not employed by the school district, but I am utilized by the school district to help teach restorative practices. And I spend a lot of time, as I say, in the school. The young man had graduated that day and had gone off that evening with some friends and returned home to find basically a domestic situation ongoing at his home. I won't speak more specifics of that other than there was a police presence that night that seemed to me overwhelmingly large and suggested to me that the police at that moment were not able to differentiate a response to something that might have been minimal or might have been a very large situation unfolding. So without being a trained police officer, I can't differentiate. I don't have the training. But it seemed to me that the response of having 18 or 20 police cars come into the community for what turned out to be, in my judgment, a fairly minor incident involving a 14-year-old, caused a lot of consternation among young children in the neighborhood. I observed a lot of trauma, which, trauma, the nature of trauma is it's ongoing. It's not just momentary and over, it's ongoing. And so, two things I observed, one of which was a police officer say to an individual, I don't know what the relation of the individual was to the 14-year-old, but said, "Do you think I want to hurt you? I'm too old for this." And I thought to myself, what does the police officer's age have to do with a comment like that to any individual? And the second thing I believe to be true is that the age of the individual, the 14-year-old, was not ascertained by the police until he was at booking. So it suggests to me that both the level, the nature of the response is excessive, and that there's an inability to differentiate whether it's a minor situation that can be brought under control quickly. So that's my concern. Can we differentiate? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elder Brown, Gloria Brown, and I worked with youth from 2003 until still today. I just want to say to the young man, right there, I know him. I apologize. I used to work on the Detective Earl Willow. And I'm gonna tell you something, the older police department was nothing like the new one. In my neighborhood, we live in a school zone, and you have police that's going down the street at least 100 miles an hour. For what, I don't know. Maybe they're going after chasing another neighborhood, but they got no respect for the kids because the kids are trying to get in the park and they don't care about the cars, the little ones, because you know what? Nobody out there watching. I sit in my car every day and I watch and I tell some of the officers, you can't be low riding. I'm from LA. When you put your car down, got you sitting all down in the seat, like, you know, respect for yourself or for your uniform, you acting just like somebody in the street. So, you know, they listen, but we got to turn, what's his name, Blackwell over there now. Things is getting better. They get much, much better with our young people, and thank God for that. But some of the young police officers need to be back in training with the community. They need to realize that they was young. They acted up when their mom and dad wasn't around or looking. So even though they went, the only authority they have is the badge and the gun and the uniform. With that not being owned, you just have as much authority as I have. And that authority is to say, you know, move, you don't, you don't. But they need to be retrained. They got an academy over there, take them in there. Bring them out in the community. Let them learn what the young people want to hear. Let them know what the mothers and fathers want to hear. Because when a mom and a dad send their child out to school, they don't send them out there to get caught by a cop because they didn't move fast enough and get beat down. I say to the young people, they got great young kids out there. It's just sometimes, every now and then, some get with the wrong crowd. But retrain your young men because they don't act like police officers. I know. I sit in my car every day, 5 hours, reading my Bible or praying in my neighborhood, and I see them going down the street, and stop signs are there to stop them, but they care less about the stop sign because they're driving that patrol car.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Minister Donna Stewart Eagles, but I was a Bridgeport police officer for 25 years. I'm here now in this forum because I have 3 African-American sons who I'm trying to keep alive. And last week, Officer Riley, and I guess it's the son, because I worked with the father. I believe there's a son on the job. And a woman called me on the cell phone and said, your son asked me to call you because the Bridgeport police have him hemmed up at the City Court gas station on Housatonic Avenue. Could you get here, please? So I went there, and I just observed, and I saw my son, who was a passenger in a car with another black male. And the officer came over to me, and I introduced myself as retired Officer Donna Stewart Eagles. So he asked me which one was my son. And I pointed to my son, James. And he said, well, I'm stopping the other guy. I had 8 charges on the other guy. And I said, well, what did they do? So he had 8 motor vehicle charges. But after I introduced myself as a retired Bridgeport officer, he said, I'm only going to charge him with 4. And I'm not going to tow the car. But my thing is, if you have probable cause, you make whatever arrest you need to make. And the thing of it is, the young lady forwarded me a video of it. Like, I don't know if you're having problems with Officer Riley, but I would appreciate if you would check it if you are having problems with him. And like I said, people say, well, why did you come here? Because I am an African-American female raised in an African-American male who I'm trying to keep alive.
Mm-hmm.
I'll move over here. So I have a personal story to share as well. In May of 2017, it was a really hot day. It was 95 degrees, and I was walking around St. Mary's with my friend, my dog, and 2 of my 3 children. At the time, my youngest was 8 months old. And it was really hot, and if you know St. Mary's, there's only one tree at the end of it there. So I parked my stroller underneath the shade of that one tree because my 8-month-old had fallen asleep. And then my 3-year-old wanted to go play on the rocks, which are maybe 30 yards from the shade of the tree. So my friend and I and my dog and my 3-year-old walked over to the rocks within eyesight of my sleeping baby. All of a sudden I hear, excuse me, is this your baby? And I look up and there's a police officer standing right next to my stroller pointing. And I say, yep, that's my baby. And he says, get over here. So I go over and I, in my mind I'm like, all right, this is, okay, sorry, officer. And he says, name, date of birth, address. And I was like, what? What are you doing? And he said, I'm a mandated reporter. I'm sorry, I'm just like a little weird. I am a mandated reporter, and I have to report you to DCF. And I said, no, absolutely not. I didn't do anything wrong. You will not report me to DCF. And he said, without missing a beat, if you don't want me to report you to DCF, I'm going to arrest you. And I was like, what? No, absolutely not. I am neither getting arrested nor getting reported. It's 11:30 on a Friday morning in a park. The whole situation escalated. He called for backup. His backup called for backup. By the end of it, there were 3 officers there, one of whom was a sergeant. They allowed me, I guess you could say, to call my husband. When he arrived on the scene, they approached him as if, look at what your dumb wife has done. Basically man to man, can you believe this nonsense? And I didn't know what to do, when I tried to, my dad was like, why didn't you cry? My brother was like, you can't argue with police officers. When I tried to argue, the response that I got back was, because I was like, this isn't reasonable. What are you charging me with? And they said, injury or risk of injury to a minor. And all I can think about that day, because they did report me to DCF, and I have a case file at social services on me for 3 years. All I can think about is that I'm a white woman, and if I were a black woman, a black mother, they would have arrested me like that. That there would have been no arguing, no call for backup. I would have gotten arrested, taken away from my children, and taken downtown immediately. Thank you.
So my name is Samara Tones. I'm a community leader. Whatever they have me, you name it, I'm there. I'm volunteering. I'm helping out. The mayor started a new initiative for community policing where I'm the chair over. And the end of May, I was at work and I got a phone call from We Transport that my son was assaulted on the bus. My son goes to a therapeutic school because of trauma. And he looks like he's probably in 1st grade, he's really small. And that the police were called because he was assaulted. So I called my son and my husband trying to figure out where the bus is so I can get there. And my son tells me where the bus is, I get off the highway. My son is in my husband's car behind the bus, and my husband is standing at the bus stop, at the entrance of the bus. My son tells me what happened. He was assaulted. He didn't react because I've always taught him not to hit girls. So he did everything in his power not to. I get on the bus to kind of figure out what's going on. And once I get on the bus, there's an outraged young lady, an outraged another young boy, and I help them de-escalate that child because I've done first aid, mental health training, and whatever other training you can think of. And I introduced myself, and I thought that was about it. They told us we couldn't leave because a report had to be filed. So I was asked to get off the bus once the police arrived. And I'm standing against the fence with state troopers, police officers, and the young lady on the bus is coming to the window from one side of the bus to the other side of the bus, calling me all types of names, all types of things. And that didn't bother me. I work with kids every day. So I said to them, she's out of our control right now, and she really needs help. Let's call the ambulance to get her the help that she needs. And the state trooper said to me, sure. So I called 911. While I'm on the phone with 911, I see my son running to get back on the bus. He couldn't get back on the bus because the officer was standing in the doorway and my husband was standing outside of the door of the bus. And I could see him in a rage. And my husband calming him down. I go over while I'm on the phone with 911 and I talk to him. I said, remember self-control, we talk about this. And then my husband's walking away from him and I'm thinking, okay, this is it. As my husband is walking away with my son, who again looks like he's in first grade, the officer takes out his handcuffs. And I go to him and I said, I know you're not getting ready to handcuff my 10-year-old son, who at the time was really 11. I got 5 kids. Sometimes I don't remember their birthdays. And he says, oh, yes, I am. So I hold one end of the handcuffs and I say to him, why? He's calmed down. My husband is taking him away. Why do you think it's okay to handcuff a child? And he tells me that he's going to put him in handcuffs. So I said no. So a lot of back and forth goes. My husband is talking, I'm talking. My husband finally, that's 3 minutes? Wow. So let me speed it up. Yeah? Okay. So my husband leaves with my son, and because they told us we couldn't leave because we had to make a report, I stayed. And I'm against the fence. I go back to the fence, now I'm standing here. And I said, you know what? I said, this is getting out of hand. I'm going to call Chief Perez because I sit in many meetings with him. We talk about community policing. And I try to back it up as much as I can, and I'm calling him. And in the midst of me calling him, I see the officer say something to, I guess, was the sergeant. She said something back. I was manhandled, put in handcuffs, never been arrested a day in my life. I got 5 boys and I teach them choices so that they would never have to go through situations of being behind bars like some of my family members or even their fathers. And I kept saying, well, what are you guys doing? Like, what am I getting arrested for? And the guy says, you hit me. I said, you're lying. I never ever put my hands on you, which I never touched him. He says, I'm bleeding. And I'm like, wow, okay. So I get put into a police officer's car with no movement, no air. The windows are up. It's about 80-something degrees outside. And I kept saying, can somebody call the chief? Like, we should be doing something different than this. Where's your de-escalation training? Like, I hear that you guys are taking it. Where is it right now? Is your body cam on? Is it working? It gotta be. This is wrong. The lady puts me in the car. She leaves for like 15 minutes, comes back. I said, did anybody call the chief? You're going to booking. Ask down there. Long story short story, I get to booking. And I refused to give any information because I didn't feel like I did anything wrong and I did not deserve to be there. So they put me in the cell. I go from there, I'm making this really short because it was a lot. I was there for 8 hours. They put me in a cell. Now I gotta go to the hospital because both of my wrists are swollen. My left knee is swollen. Real quick, sorry. And
I get to the hospital. When going to the hospital, the story I want you to hear, going to the hospital, I refused to put the handcuffs back on because I was going there because my wrist was swollen. So they put me in shackles, brought me to the hospital, denied me phone calls once I got back, denied me an attorney, took mugshot fingerprints, and denied me to see the bail bondsman. I paid $1,900 after I had just purchased a home 2 days later. I had to pay $1,900 to get out of prison.
I have a story too. I'm gonna sit and sort of go where it's standing. So I didn't introduce myself when we started, but I'm Sakina. I'm from Bridgeport. I live in Bridgeport currently. And I have a couple of stories, but one that happened to me was when I had just graduated high school and I was working at Home Neighborhood House, I think through youth work, so I was there just for a couple of months. And there was this guy who, long story short, tried to abduct me. So I called 911 and I had missed the bus, so I was taking a city bus at the time. And I spoke to the dispatcher and I was like, you know, like my bus is coming, like I wanna go home, like I don't wanna just stand out here for this guy to come back. And the dispatcher said, you know, no, tell the officers that I said they need to bring me home. So I'm like, okay, they get there, take the information or whatever, and they're like, oh no, he just wanted to say hi to a pretty girl, I wouldn't worry about it. And they turned to leave, and I was like, well, y'all took so long, I missed my bus, so can you bring me home? And so we don't have to do that. And I told them, you know, the dispatcher had said, look, you do need to bring me home. What else am I supposed to do? Just stand out here and wait for him to come back. And that was, I guess, almost 10 years ago now. And I just wonder with the lack of police officers that are fired for more egregious things, there was no time, or excuse me, no outlet then to air a complaint. My parents and I were trying to figure out how do we get in touch with somebody to say, you know, somebody just tried to abduct a 17-year-old from the bus stop. Who can we talk to? And there was nobody then, and there's nobody now. And that's a problem because there's kids that are growing up in really dangerous places, and some of the people who are supposed to be helping us are dangerous too. That's it.
Good evening. My name is Dasha Spell. Actually, my experience with the Bridgeport Police Department detectives happened at my old agency. I used to work at an outpatient program where 18 to 25 mandated either through the courts or probation were sent to our programs for different services. And this particular morning, we were getting ready for IOP, our group, intensive outpatient program. And all the guys started to get nervous because they were outside coming in, and they were like, the police are pulling up. Now, some of our guys obviously have records and have had some encounters with police officers. But we had them go inside, and as a staff, we were out there, and we were asking what's going on. The particular detectives introduced themselves. I'm like, we're here because we're looking for this particular person. We were like, oh, well, this is a private property. This is a program. We can't be here. Yes, we can. No. Did someone do something wrong? Did someone steal something, break something, hurt someone, and ran into our building? No. And they gave us a hard time. Now, mind you, this is a program where you're supposed to feel safe. And even if you're mandated, there were some kids who actually wanted to get something out of it. And at one point, they actually went around our building and did a search of the property. And it's crazy when you think about it because you're supposed to be able to go somewhere, walk in here, and feel like you have privacy. That you can be comfortable wherever you go, and you don't have to worry about looking behind you. A lot of the kids that I deal with and come across with have to continue to look over their shoulders, behind their backs, have to wonder if a cop comes by them, are they gonna be pulled over because that label, or they had encounters, or they have this reputation, or it's not even them, it's who they're associated with. And that's frustrating, because there are some youth that are trying to make changes in their lives, but because of their past, or who they're affiliated with, or who they're related to, they never get the opportunity. And that's one of the things that, as the Bridgeport Police Department, this year's an important year. We have elections going on across the board. Actually, I'm a candidate for the Board of Education. So one of the things that I want to see happen is that we can work on different things as a community, because there are kids, and people need to understand that. When you step up to be a police officer, a detective, a city official, whoever it is, this is our community and these are our kids. So you should treat them as though they're your kids. Thank you.
I am a survivor of sexual assault, and I have an officer on the Bridgeport Police Department to thank for that. He is still on the force, and over the last 2 years with Jen now, some of my work has included attending police commission meetings. And in some instances, that officer has been present. There are times when I'm walking down the street and that officer spots me and thinks that it is appropriate to call me by name. And I think I just want to name that sexual assault and domestic violence are clearly a pattern within the Bridgeport Police Department, and not being addressed. And to speak to what it means to walk down the street and see your rapist in uniform, armed, is not something that any community member should experience. One more time.
A couple years ago, kind of piggyback what you're saying, I was a victim also of domestic abuse, and I was able to get out of the apartment and hide behind my apartment building and call the police and wait for them to come. When the police arrived, I had injuries, but they treated me like I, was like the assault person, the person who actually assaulted, even regardless of all my injuries. I ended up going to the hospital. I don't know what happened to the other person. We both got charged. And I kind of just want to, my grievance with the police department is how they handle these domestic calls, these, I think that they put protocol over people, and I think it's important to address that, because I think, especially officers who are in the force for a long time, they get desensitized to these situations, and they think badge before people, and it just doesn't make sense. So that's like my biggest grievance, because there was another situation where this individual, further along, a couple months later, was parking his car in front of my building, just kind of like as an intimidation thing.
I called the police again, and this person I was talked to and spoken to, like I was crazy and I didn't have, I didn't make sense, or I didn't, that this person could park there if he wanted to, even though there was like, this history of, violence and abuse and case with the police department. So yeah, I just kind of want to just pinpoint that and just make, have the police department take a second look at how they answer calls like that.
Do you have any other stories? I think we have about 10 more minutes.
Can I just name some real quick? I don't need that. I just
We
want to
can't hear
name
you on the
that,
live stream.
I was charged with risk of injury to a minor because my son was present. I was charged with interference with a police officer, and I was charged with assault on an officer that I never put my hands on. And again, I'm 37 years old, never ever, ever been arrested in my life. Real quick also, when the report came out, instead of taking accountability for if you made a mistake, a lot of lies were told. And my son at this point now needs to text and call me to make sure that I'm okay. And was asking me questions like, how does something like this happen? I don't understand. Why are they saying these things? This didn't happen. And I really want to know, how do you expect and what do you expect for me to say to him?
I just also want to add that in the report for my incident, they lied too and said that I was up over 100 yards away from my child, which is like a football field. So.
I want to say, since the chief is here, then maybe you can't say anything now, but if you go to your report and find out that he owed you open policy, both of you young ladies, the city and the state owed that. Now, it's not a smirk, it's for real. They owe them a lot.
Did you have a story to share? Is this working?
Yeah, you just have to talk into it.
Did you have something to share? No.
My name is Craig Gordon. A few of you know me. I run a nonprofit. I study human behavior. And we're sitting on a powder keg here. And I've been begging people for 30 years in Bridgeport to take biochemistry and nutrition seriously. Begging on my bloody elbows, on my knees, to take this seriously. And they don't.
Sorry, sir, this is not the space for
It is.
It's not actually, because we're here to
Because it's
address the
behavior,
police department.
and all these things emanate from poor biochemistry.
We're gonna ask for the mic
Thank
back.
you.
Thank you.
There you go again.
Not space.
Nice seeing you.
Nice to see you. Thank you for coming.
It's too bad. Good luck, everybody.
Thanks.
Questions, like, to actually for your report? Can you ask questions? Okay. What training or, what sensitivity training has the police department had? Do they do implicit bias training, or cultural responsive training? Is there a report that you have handy
that talks about the training that you had that addresses community relations.
My question would be, with the body cam that we fought so hard to get, what is the protocol of not removing them or turning them off?
I don't think we need the answer.
Oh, no. Oh, questions
Yes,
for the
yeah,
for
so
the
if everybody
report.
else has questions that they want considered for the report, I think that's a good use of time.
I have one.
right next to the thing. Don't need this.
My question is, why are our police officers' cars fully tinted, and why can community not see their faces? That to me is a point of intimidation and threat, and it makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Question to include, with impending threats of raids from ICE 2 weekends ago and looks like this coming weekend, I'm curious how much data about people in Bridgeport is being collected and shared with, from the police department, from schools, and through other organizations.
Is there any initiative to reach out to the youth, dealing with street safe and going out with youth? It's hard for us to go out there when there's a big police presence out there. They start, believing we're working with the police department, and what we're doing is trying to help them see that there's other ways in the streets. Myself, being a former incarcerated youth, going to prison at 16, it's a passion of mine is not see these guys going in the footsteps that I went. And it's hard because they're afraid of the police, and they think that we're working hand in hand with the police, but at the same time we're not. Is there any initiative that the police will try to break that barrier, that ice barrier with the youth, and build some type of communication that it's really needed in the city?
But this is more talking stick than microphone. Again, Shamir Holmes. I am interested in knowing if the police department ever explored the concept of credible messengers. I was with the Connecticut Juvenile Justice Alliance as a justice advisor, so shout out to them even though they're not here tonight. But we did a lot of work with youth and reentry, but also just youth dealing with police and interactions. So we learned when we went to a conference in New York that something called credible messengers are very much, it's proven to be effective. So I think that what the gentleman was saying, like I work with Street Safe as well at one point with the young ladies, it's important that they see people firsthand who walk the same streets, who have gone through situations like them. Yes, there's a relationship with officers, but the officers, even in New York, some parts of New York, they know that there's a thin line, and they know when to hand over some of that workload to people who look like these kids and to people who can really identify. So if Bridgeport can really research and tap into credible messengers, I think that this will really catapult a lot of just issues that we're going through right now. It will really help preserve some relationships.
Shout out to credible messengers.
Yes.
Pastor Doran, right again. As someone who volunteers about a third of my time in the public schools, coaching restorative practices even among teachers. I know we have a woefully underfunded school district. We have one social emotional learning coordinator for the entire district. I work with a number of youth who are called SEL ambassadors. They're up and coming 7th graders to carry this work forward. And I know that SROs have been in training, school resource officers. I have been in trainings with them. My question is, how uniform is this training throughout the department? because one overly aggressive response by police to a situation can lead to then the undercutting of the efforts for social emotional learning. So I'm looking for integration between police and the school district that will create a robust and holistic alignment with restorative practices.
Hi, Dasha Isabel again. So I actually have a two-part question. The first one is that previously when all the violence was happening in the community, especially on the East End, Councilman Newton has suggested the substations. So I have a question to Chief Perez. In regards to substations, I do understand that we have 4+ different sites of town. Why not actually convert them into a community resource where you have community providers and the police in the same building? Honestly, from my understanding, on certain sides of towns, the only time you really see police walking through the community is when there's a big incident. That doesn't help anything, because you're only there when something's going on. Once it cools off, then you disappear again. And then the second part is that when it comes to actual trainings, do y'all actually do trainings that are not only cultural based, but also trauma based? Because you do have to understand, people are starting to use the word trauma. Bridgeport is the largest city in the state, and we have severe trauma. So when officers approach a youth, if you're used to hearing kids getting shot, what's the first thing you're gonna think about? So your reactions may be different if it wasn't. So how we approach kids, because I have talked to officers and they're like, well, these kids are nasty and rude. On the flip side, some of y'all are nasty and rude. So it goes back to the training piece. And also, is the trainings consistent? I'm sorry, I have a bunch of questions for you. And when I got you here, I might as well just throw them all out there. Are the trainings consistent? Are y'all doing it every 3 months to check in? Because you know what? Your officers, they're out on the street, they see a lot of things, they're traumatized as well. Vicarious, it's a flip-flop kind of situation. I'm sorry, I'm a licensed therapist, so this stuff right here is big for me. So, I said, go ahead, sis. Oh, okay. Okay, so getting back, also, just a suggestion, y'all can take it or not, what you put in your report. One time I actually did a training where we did a flip-flop, so I actually had staff, so you would have the police actually be the community members and have somebody else be the police, so they get an understanding of how people feel when you get approached. So stuff like that can kind of help break down those biases, but also bring out those biases. Because some people don't deserve or should be in those positions if they can't separate the two. That's it for me. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize.
Hi, my name is Julie. I was a member of the city's junior council program, and on one of the weeks we visited the police department, and the person who was our tour guide, who was an officer, I was asking him about anti-bias training and any kind of trainings like that they received, and he just said no, they didn't have access to that. And he said that there was some type of training, but it was only once a year. Additionally, a part of the program when we went, we also visited the holding cells, and the people in charge just were kind of laughing and were kind of intimidating. They were like, oh no, of course we don't have toilet paper, and just making comments like that, which I found very disturbing.
So that's my other question. Why are the holding cells so disgusting? I was there for 8 hours on my feet because I didn't want to touch anything in there. There was no soap to wash your hands. The tissue that they gave you was thinner than Kleenex, and it was short, and it was sitting on top of the filthy, nasty metal bed that they expect for you to lay on.
It's cold.
I stood the whole.
Okay, that was a lot. Does anybody else have anything before
before we kind of switch gears a little bit? Any burning things that you want to say, want to get off your chest?
I just say that the police is here to protect the young men back in training, teach them not to be on the phone while they're doing 50 and 80 miles an hour in a district. Teach them. If you got a camera over there, watch, you can see. Some of the cars is not black tenant, and they're all on the phone with their wristband around their wrist, sitting down in the seat, speeding down House Avenue.
I would also like to say, and I'm not gonna say nothing else, to Chief Perez, when are you gonna start utilizing the power that you have to hold these officers accountable?
I knew there was more. My name is Perez, and what's really bothering me, and I'm really bad at public speaking, but I think it's important to be said, when everything happened with Jason Negron, like, it happened around the school. My school, and I was teaching 5th grade, and I remember going to work scared because I knew my kids would ask me questions, and they did. My kids, some of them knew him, some of them had family members, and it was hard. I was 5th grade, and the same day, like, we have a police officer that came by, and they had wanted no parts anymore. They didn't want to talk to him. They didn't want him coming out at recess, and that was different. So this is a generational thing. So if we don't address it, and our schools, when these trauma things happen to our students, like, they grow up to just hate the police. And what are you gonna tell them? They're 10 years old. Like, all they understood is there's a kid that was shot, that was left there. That's all they got. There's nothing else. They see what they see on Facebook. Like, that's what they understand. And then they go to 6th grade and it just gets perpetrated when they see other things happening too. And they just, like, I'll never forget that class, and I see them now. That's what they remember about the police, and now they don't. They have other ideas and things too, because we never addressed it. Like, our school, we don't address it. And then what do you do as a teacher? And then they leave you. And that's the message that they're getting, like, their life isn't valuable. So, like, F that and F it, because they don't get it. And there's nothing that happens, there's no relationship with the police because it's all negative. And then they have other things that are happening too, like, I don't know who said it, but it is trauma, and they internalize it, and then they grow up, and then we have this cycle. So if you don't address it when they're in 5th grade, then we're gonna have what we have right now.
Okay. How do I say this? So I think that a lot of our solutions are within the community. Bridgeport Police, as we've heard and seen, have a number of trainings, have had issues for a long time. So we as the community need to take some responsibility for public safety too. So for us, I want to talk about what does safety look like for us. When you think about safety, and you can answer on your index cards, what does safety mean to you? Imagine the safest place that you can think of. What's there? Who's there? What exists? Anybody need it? So, again, what does safety mean to you? Imagine the safest place that you can think of. What's there? Who's there? There's also pizza. There's a lot of pizza. Yeah, there's a lot of pizza. We'll give 5-10 minutes, see how you're doing in 5 minutes. Feel free to grab some pizza, some water, stretch.
was gonna say we can comment, but there's nobody there.
I don't know, I don't think it worked.
Yeah, a lot of
Something
people were
happened.
saying they can't hear. I think this mic was cutting in and out too.
I think it might have been that, I was on the Wi-Fi, and the signal's not good over here, so. But we'll see.
Perfect. Always play it back and check.
Safety is transparency. Safety is trust in people and leadership. Safety is knowledge of policies and laws and procedures. Safety is consideration of all people regardless of class and race. Safety is consistent with positive engagement between youth and communities and policing. And safety is culturally relevant to the times. So that's what safety is.
Anyone else? Same thing? Plagiarizing?
Mine was short and sweet. It goes back to it takes a village. It has to be, whether you have a uniform on, whether you have a pair of Jordans on, whether you have a pair of Pringles on, it has to be everybody. States. But don't, even with the youth, everybody there, if you did something wrong, by the time you got home, your mother knew about it. And we didn't have cell phones then. It has to be a whole. We have to be one. And that's, safety is saying, we go back to that ability.
And I'll kind of go along with what you said. Since safety means people taking the time to get to know the people around them. When you know people, a sense of community can thrive. When a community thrives, people take care of each other. When you know people around you will take care of you, you feel safe. It takes away bias, prejudice, and tension.
Are we allowed to answer this question, Leon? I know that you didn't want us answering.
They're not,
commenting.
that wasn't really a question.
No,
We're
could
not
we-
taking comments at this point now.
I couldn't comment on this. I got this.
Oh, what, you have?
Yeah,
What
you-
you
yeah,
have?
what I believe
Yeah, I thought you
safety
were
is-
trying to respond, sorry.
No.
Go ahead.
My belief, and I'm going to keep it short, safety to me is my mother's kitchen. It's my mother's kitchen because I know I have love there. I know there's nothing in the world that would ever hurt me there. And I know that that's what you guys are looking for. You're looking for the city to be your mother's kitchen. You want to be safe. You want to feel that. Part of the reason I went on the board was so that I can be a voice in that. Part of the reason why I run for office when I run for office is because I want to be a part of that. Bridgeport, I love Bridgeport. There's not a place better. I've been all over the world. I've been all over the world. I was in the Navy, I spent 4 years. I lived in Puerto Rico. I went to Puerto Rico for 2 weeks, stayed 4 years. But there's no place like Bridgeport. I was wondering the other day, and I said, what makes Bridgeport so special to me? What is it about Bridgeport? And it's always been, the answer has always been the people. So I said, what makes the people in Bridgeport so special? And it came to me just not long ago. We have the ability to recognize. Not everybody has that. You can recognize. Real recognize is real. You know when you're up with a phony, or you know, because we learned that. That's instilled in us. That's what Bridgeport has. That's what Bridgeport is great for. We have the ability to recognize.
Thank you.
That's what safety is for me.
Should I hold the talking stick or?
I'm tired. If y'all want me to get some steps
So, in my safe places piggyback off of you, I kind of took it as like an environmental and surrounding perspective also with a little bit of policing theme. So I'll just read it straight verbatim from my card. It says, in my safe place, there are well-lit sidewalks, there are clean streets, there's conscious driving. There are no street walkers or gathering of police cars in one area. In my safe place, there are more police on bikes instead of armored cars or tinted cars. That's it, to my safe place.
For mine, I actually switched things around. I put God first, and then hope. I'm born and raised in Bridgeport, 40 years and some months. So for me, I grew up when Marina Apartments was up. Father Peonage, Pequanix was my running ground. And what made it was the community, the people. You looked out for one another. You supported. You had police in the community. You knew who people were. You interacted. Now it's like, I don't know you, or I don't like you. Why would I talk to you? And it shouldn't be like that. Especially because I'm raising a girl to be a woman. I have boys that I want to be men. And it's hard to do when in the community they don't feel safe.
I wrote it down. A genuine and strong trust in our community, among and between all of us. Trust based on our own personal experience living in our city.
Yes.
Let's say to start in my home. Because the Bible says train up a child in the way they should go. When they get old, it might depart, but
body's not right. Sorry, that's the way it is. And so what we have to do is pray for the head, that they get right. And then if they get right, then everybody underneath will fall in. But most of, I would see safety would be the biggest thing, is love among one another. A love in our neighborhood, and love even with our enemies and our friends, we have to love them no matter what.
I'll share mine. Safety smells like the ocean, a breeze blowing across the faces of young children who play in a park without fear. Safety is a community that takes care of each other without needing an occupying force to hold it down or to contain it. Safety is no need for police at all.
Anybody else? The cool thing about what many of you said is that we're doing community building, right? That's what this is. This is our community. Folks that are here. So before you leave, meet somebody that you haven't met. There's a couple of faces from anyone from here too. And we're having another session like this. I would imagine it's going to be real different. It'll be a different tone. It's a visioning session on September 27th. It'll probably be here. So to talk about how do we get to that kitchen table, right? How do we get to that place where we actually know our neighbors? I'm working on it. I know the ones to the left, to the right. I'm working on everybody else. But how do we take that steps? I think sometimes that's all it is for people. When somebody else puts themselves out there, then they're willing to do that too. And what can we commit to as a community to do, right? Because it takes all of us. It takes a village, like you said. So what can we commit to? Even small things, right? You see kids riding their bikes. Maybe they live in your neighborhood riding their bikes crazy. Can y'all ride with traffic at least? Don't get hit, something like that. Really simple things. And parents really do appreciate that. I work with kids too. They tired me out. I just finished a 3-week summer program with them. And if you know me, you know I'm a little happy that that's over. But I'm happy that they had somewhere they could go that is safe. And that feels good for them. And if they could have that everywhere in Bridgeport, that would be awesome. So our next session will be September 27th. It'll be a visioning session for the community. And I don't know if anybody else has closing thing. Well, I'm not using that, so you go.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's been going in.
Is it? I don't know. Is it? I just want to say thank you to everyone who came and shared their story, and all the courage, the courage that it took to get up and share your story, and to know that you were in a safe place with people who got you. We got you. The community is here. That is why we exist, because we are Bridgeport. We don't just sit here as one person. Each one of us has family, friends who have more stories. And I just want to say to those who are here in an official kind of capacity, thank you for being here. But most importantly, we wanted you here because we wanted you to hear why there's so much anger, right? Why we are upset, why things must change, and why we have to demand that you do that. You are in the position that you are in, Chief, because we have collective power. We have collective power, and you need to do right by us and right by our children. People are losing their lives out here. This is not a joke, right? Spaces like this carry a lot of weight. We wanted you to feel that and bring that back to how you go about disciplining officers who are out of line, how you go about creating policies and procedures in that department when our lives are at stake. where nobody feels safe and loved. Our city shouldn't feel this way. We should not have to live under these conditions. So, thank you, Chief Ramsey. I was gonna say Chief Ramsey, Consultant Ramsey. I don't know how I should.
How about Chuck Ramsey?
Chuck Ramsey. Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to be here and to help convene. And thank you for being diligent about taking notes, and we hope that
I got a lot of good
you
stuff.
learned a lot. And Lieutenant Cotto, thank you for your presence also. And our lonely commissioner, thank you. And I would hope that you would bring what you learned, what you heard, back to the commission when it's time to make decisions on the police commission, what this community cares about.